England is the hometown of Formula One. Since the first Arab states hosted the Formula One Grand Prix in Bahrain in 2004, GCC and Middle East countries such as Qatar, Emirate, and Saudi are trying hard to host Formula One events. The huge investment of these small nations on motorsport indicated. They are using Formula One as a phenomenon to cite on global map. Watch the international workshop on the future of motorsports.
My name is Simon Chadwick. I work at Schema Business School.
And I'm really glad to understand more because I'm trying to find some information about a lot of things about it.
About Yas Marina, I think, is that obviously there is a marina, a fully functioning marina there that is part of the development. You also have a hotel, so this is a leisure and retail development as well. And others amongst you will know that it's also the home of the Ferrari World theme park. And so, what immediately is development that is not just a piece of sport infrastructure, it is also a piece of tourism infrastructure, it is also a leisure and entertainment destination. And so again, what we're seeing across sport, we're seeing it in football, we're seeing it in basketball, we're seeing it with major events, for example, like the Olympics, is the infrastructure at multiple uses. And moving forward, if the Middle East is going to attract particularly international and global motorsports events, and you have to create infrastructure that is financially sustainable, then you need to start thinking about, well, how do we fund this? How do we construct it? How do we ensure that we achieve a return on the investment? And as I say, one of the things that we're seeing across the world is to create infrastructure that has multiple different uses. Some of you will know, particularly Formula One fans, is what we have seen over the last decade is Formula One cars being paraded in city centres, and certainly in London. I went to London ahead of a Formula One Grand Prix to see Lewis Hamilton drive his Mercedes around the streets of London. So what we've seen is street basketball, street football, street tennis, street athletics. So street athletics is really interesting because what you have is the IAAF, the International Amateur Athletics Federation, staging 100-meter races, staging 800-meter races in city centres, on circuits in city centres. So I think that is a really interesting development because it brings the sport directly to people. So I think one of the things that you have to think about, not just in the Middle East, but in motorsport more generally across the world, is how do you take motorsport to the people, not just at grassroots level, but obviously more generally at professional level too. There is an issue of infrastructure, and we look at Yas Marina, for example, in Abu Dhabi, and this photograph is from Yas Marina in Abu Dhabi. As many of you, I'm sure, will know, incredible facility. But once you've built a circuit, essentially you are left with a piece of infrastructure that on a 24/7, 365 basis may be difficult to utilize and may therefore be difficult to financially justify building. So when I talk about 24/7, 365, 24 hours a day. So now again, we think about some of the great motorsport events in history. Perhaps we think about the Monaco Grand Prix, or perhaps we think about the Le Mans 24-hour race, or perhaps think about the Indy 500. These events are not in the Middle East. So again, in terms of showcase events, showcase properties, marquee events, marquee properties, in terms of establishing motorsport in the Middle East as being distinctive and unique and having competitive advantage. Some interest for years is now taking place in Saudi Arabia, and clearly taking cars across Saudi Arabia through the desert is is really interesting because we don't have deserts in Europe. This is something that we can't do. So desert racing, I think, is a really interesting opportunity for the Middle East. What I find interesting about the way in which Saudi Arabia has engaged with the Paris-Dakar Rally is they're deliberately routing stages through major tourism attractions. And so essentially the Paris-Dakar Rally has been embedded within Saudi Arabian tourism strategy. And if we think about UNESCO World Heritage sites like Al-Ula, for example, in Saudi Arabia, in the northwest of Saudi Arabia, what you now have is cars racing against the backdrop of some of those UNESCO World Heritage sites in Al-Ula. But I think it's more than that, and Saudi Arabia is trying to position itself as being the Middle East's motorsport hub. You will be aware that they're creating Qiddiya. Qiddiya is a $10 billion investment in the creation of an entertainment and sports city. By 2025, there will be a motor racing circuit inside Qiddiya, and this is where the 2025 Formula One Grand Prix will be staged. I can imagine that Saudi Arabia will try to induce industrial clustering around that circuit. So what we will see is research and development in motorsport. We will see teams being located at the Qiddiya circuit. We will see other events in the international racing calendar going to Saudi Arabia. And obviously, from a Middle Eastern perspective, that is a good thing, but it's also a bad thing too, because we don't want the domination of one or two or perhaps 3 or 4 countries of motorsport in the region. And so one of the things I think that the Middle East in general has to think more carefully about is how you create enticing, engaging, commercially viable, commercially successful events and properties that attract viewers, not just within the viewers and fans, not just within the region, but I think more globally as well.